This is going to be a lesson on a John Fahey song, the one that you just heard. It's called John Henry, and it's one of a few different versions that he recorded over the years, and this was the one off of either the first or second issuing of Blind Joe Death. I think it was off of the first one in 1959. Anyways, it's a super cool tune. Just tuning wise, get your guitar into standard tuning. And just as a little trick so that your hand doesn't start to ache trying to learn the mechanics and muscle memory of this tune, rather than doing it in open position to start off with, what I figured would be maybe easiest on everybody is if you capoed up to the 4th fret, and then spending the several hours that you will need to spend on a tune like this, you won't at least tire your hand out as much as you could potentially tire your hand out. And anyways, once you get your moves and coordination down on the 4th fret, then you can take the capo off and play it in open position. Alright? So I guess with that being said, we can get into the tune. Sorry I've been kind of not posting lately. I've just been in school and haven't had the time to really get anything together. But now things are starting to wind down and have some time to post this Fahey video. This song in particular is kind of off of what I guess is the Mississippi John Hurt version of Spike Driver Blues that Fahey no doubt got a hold of somehow. Mississippi John Hurt was one of his favorite guitarists. And if you listen to that recording, his 1928, I believe, recording of Spike Driver Blues, you'll hear the similarity, and not only that, but you'll kind of, get a sense for what Fahey probably was hearing upon creating this tune. So check out that Mississippi John Hurt recording and this Fahey recording. Sorry for talking so much. Getting into the tune. Throughout the song, it pretty much has this alternating bass that is no doubt a bit intimidating. It's an alternating bass with your 3rd finger or some finger fretting the 3rd fret of the bottom E string, and the D string being plucked. However, rather than the typical alternating bass, beat 2 on this D string will be hit open. However, beat 4 will then have a fretted 2nd fret on that D string. And as you heard there, eventually, once you get very natural with it, it'll end up being a hammer-on. So it's almost, to correct or amend what I said earlier, it's almost that you hit that 2nd fret on the and of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and. But to backtrack, don't really think of it as such yet. That hammer-on should be an afterthought after you become so comfortable with just hitting it as 1, 2, 3, 4. So get extremely used to that, and the way I fret it is 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the bottom E, 2nd finger taking care of that 2nd fret of the D string. Now, putting that aside, we'll now deal with the treble strings. It begins with the 3rd fret of the B string being plucked, and then the open top string. And then you'll do a couple sweeps, a few sweeps, fretting the 3rd fret of that top string. And of course this is a sort of G chord being hit, so then by kind of getting a few of the extra strings in, you'll get a nice little G chord. And those extra strings being most likely the B and G strings, and of course you can hit the D string if your finger actually has that sort of range when you sweep it, but so far. Now to put that in context with the bass line, just so that at the moment you can hear what it sounds like. Now as you heard there, you play that treble part twice. And now, you kind of play it a little differently. But now you go down to the 1st fret and play it as such. So then, to reiterate, 3rd fret, then you play the G7 chord shape, of course only involving the treble strings though, so then that lets you only have to fret the 1st fret of that top E string. And then you play them open, so it's almost like it is a G6 chord. And then you come right back to the 3rd fret of the B string. Now in context. That same line, but now you play this. Now the way that goes is of course that same line. Now you hit that G6 sort of shape, which conveniently is really just the open strings with the sweep. Then you sweep across starting from the 3rd fret of the B string down, back to that G6. Then you sweep across the open strings again, except this time starting from the B string and downwards. And then you fret the 3rd fret of the G string, sweeping downwards. By downwards I mean you no longer involves the strings higher in pitch above it. And then a sweep with the G string downwards. So it's really just a series of these sweeps involving fretted or just totally open strings. And in that way it's kind of neat and simple. And then this next series of sweeps, starting with the B string, then the 3rd fret of the G string, and then just the G string open. And that's the next part. And after that you really get the gist of the song. What that is just 3rd fret of the G string, and then the open B string, and then the top E string. All of these can kind of be have that sort of vague quality, and by vague I mean you just kind of include a bunch of strings around it. It's not exactly precise and has this very rich and open quality and ringy quality. So to that effect, what I'd say is just keep this 3rd fret of the G string held down. And allow the strings to ring out as much as possible. So again, this will be, because that was pretty much the end of the song, going over the entire treble part. So to begin with, we had this kind of opening mantra that gets played in other parts of the song too. Again. Now a little bit differently with that G7. Repeat of the mantra. And now that whole series of very simple sweeps. And this will just be the ending now. Now that ending is repeated. And then the song just repeats. So as you can see, it's a very simple song, but it's a bit deceiving that way. It's very deceiving that way, because this won't be particularly easy now putting the bass part together and the treble part. Now after you've practiced that bass part, now going back to the bass part, with 1 being on that 3rd fret of the bottom E. I don't mean to repeat myself too much, but only because this is really important, I'll just say this once more. First beat, it's a 4-beat bass line. First beat is on this 3rd fret of the E string. Second beat is on the D string open, and that was an alternating bass. Back down here, and then here on that 4th beat, remember that it's a hammer-on into the 2nd fret of that D string. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now as I said before, that hammer-on, perhaps, this is just a suggestion, could be something that you add in later to ensure that you can really get that hammer-on going while playing these treble, or that 2nd fret going while you play the treble parts. So if you do take up that suggestion, I recommend you practice it as such. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. That's how I did it. And you'll find that it's very challenging to put the treble part together with this little intricate and deceiving bass line. Deceiving in how challenging it is. What I would recommend is that you play the bass part and sing the treble part. I'm whistling it so as not to subject you to my voice. But what the singing will do, and I can't think of a better suggestion, although there could be others, of course, is that, for instance, to start off the song, you realize that that treble part comes in on the 4, on beat 4. By singing it as you play this bass line, 1, 2, 3, is training your ear, because once you get these mechanics down, I mean, that only takes 20, 30 minutes maybe, depending on how focused you are. It's getting it in your ear so that your ear can start telling your fingers that they ought to be confident in what they're doing. That takes the long time, and I spent a full day on this song just trying to really hear it. And hearing that, for instance, this chorus, you get it starting on that beat 4 at the time when you're doing your hammer-on, or during the time when you're doing this hammer-on. I miss it. Notice that right when this picks up, that is when I'm getting into that beat 4 of the bass line where it's the 2nd fret. So you got to juggle these things in your head, and once you get them in your ear, and you know, initially it's you making a mental note that, okay, a conscious note, that those treble notes start and coincide with when you are responsible for that 2nd fret in the bass line on the D string. The nice thing about this song is that the phrasing on the treble side is so repetitive and simple that once you get this going, and you really nail that little mantra that we talked about with the bass line, you've covered a solid 35% of the song. And then now this is really hard. The way I got through this one is that when, and this might not make any sense over the camera, and so if it does not make any sense, then I apologize, but when I get into that G dominant shape, there is no 2nd fret of the D string being played. But then when I D fret and hit that G6 chord on top, then I play that 2nd fret of the D string in the bass. And then when I land into that 3rd fret of the B string, then I am no longer responsible for that 2nd fret in the bass. So it's almost like you're going fingering, fretting here, then fretting here, and then on this last part, you've only got, it's, okay, to articulate myself, apart from this constant 3rd fret on the bottom E string, which is always there, for this little passage, starting from this dominant, again, apart from this 3rd fret on the bottom string, it's like you've only got one finger fretting a note per time. If that makes any sense. I've only got one fret, then I take this off, and right when I take it off is the beat where this finger comes on. So again, I've only got one finger fretting a note. And then right when I need to hit this 3rd fret of the B string sweep is when it's back to the part of the bar where I don't need that middle finger on the 2nd fret of the D string. Oh, my camera died on me there, so that pretty much covers the gist of that section. Moving on, finally. through this section. A trick that, sort of scaffolding that I was using when I was learning this song. It goes back to that mantra, but now comes that series of sweeps. It seemed so innocent when we were just using the treble strings, but of course now it becomes this hurricane now that we're adding in the bass strings. But I'll tell you my little way of navigating through this. Starting from here. And that is that these two fingers, assuming that you're fretting it the same way I am, go down at the same time. Notice that right there, they both get played at the same time and therefore are fretted at the same time. On the 3rd fret of the B string with the pinky, and on the 2nd fret of the D string to cover that bass line part with the middle finger. And then you go back to this G6 chord, and when that G6 chord gets played, the bass line goes back to being an open D string. Again, they go down together, and then the 2nd time they go down together as well. D string on the 2nd fret, but this time the 3rd fret of the G string. So pretty much same sort of thing. So where they're fretted together and then they get released together. So just to go over it one last time. They go down together. Get released together. Now they're going to go down together again, right here, and then they go released together. Now to finish off, this part's a little easier, despite the fact that it sounds more complicated. And that's because you'll remember this part where I was telling you you should keep it held down to let the notes ring out. The nice thing about that is that in trying to let the notes ring out, you've got this excuse. It's not really an excuse, but in maintaining that quality, it means that you don't really have to worry about the treble part. It's a constant, the same as this 3rd fret of the bottom E string. There's nothing moving finger-wise in the left hand during that part, except for that frickin' bass line where you're going to hammer into that 2nd fret. So the only thing you've got to worry about, the only thing that's moving or dynamic, is you having to hammer into there. Just repeats. But that's pretty much the gist of the song. And it's a really tough one to learn, despite having sounded so innocent in the beginning. But patience is the way you're going to slay this one. You can resign yourself to kind of not doing the hammer on and just playing G to an open D string as the alternating bass line throughout the song. you can do that and it'll sound okay. But I'd really make a concerted effort if you're gonna go with the song, and if you do go with the song, yes, I would make the suggestion that you really push yourself to getting that bass line right, and right with all the treble parts, because to me that's what makes this song special, is that movement. It doesn't sound the same without that. Be patient with the song, because once you do get it, and there will be a time where you do get it, with the technique of, or strategy or tactic of singing along with the bass line, to really get your ears together, in order to get the organization of your left hand fingerings together, there will be a time where you get the song and it'll be a lot of fun to play, and it is so much fun to play, and it's really relaxing to play. So I do hope that you get to the point where you can enjoy the song the same way as I do, or even more so. So stick with it and with patience. Thanks for watching.